in which we meet the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I'd especially like to call out and recognise their care of country over the millennia, and my hope is that their inspiration, wisdom and guidance can play a greater role in our collective efforts to a more sustainable future moving forward. Before I forget, we're running a giveaway for a smart energy package later on, so if you're thinking should I stay, should I go, stick around, you can win something at the end. First, a little bit about me and my company, just to give you a context of where we're coming from. I'm Grace, the Chief Innovation Officer at Wattwatchers. We make low-cost energy monitoring devices that look like this. They go into switchboards like this. They measure energy that's used by things like this, sends it wirelessly to the cloud using cellular and Wi-Fi, so that it's available via cloud infrastructure for apps and services like this, to solve a whole bunch of problems like solar optimization, carbon reporting, PPA tracking, and so much more. Hopefully that gives you a little bit about where we're coming from, because what we're talking today is a lot about data, infrastructure, and particularly these kinds of devices. So I wanted to thank my colleague Murray for the title of this talk, and if you read all those words there, when I was preparing to present today, I was left a little bit feeling like I'm attempting to explain the history of the universe in 25 slides or less. There's a lot in that topic. But while it is a big topic, I think we can distill these ideas down to a story of a suburb in the not too distant future. Now, before I jump in, I mentioned a couple of companies in this presentation. I'm not saying that these companies are doing the things that I'm suggesting, but I'm using them as an example and pointers to see that a future like this is possible and possibly very near to us. Now back to our scenario. Let's start with just one single household. Meet Lana. Since COVID, Lana's been working from home like many in her community, like the Wattwatchers team, and this has been a big shift for her and her young family. Being at home has meant that her electricity bill has gone up quite a lot between her computer, additional lighting, heating, homeschooling, cooking meals at home for lunch. It's all adding up. And much of this was a cost that was previously borne by her employer, but now it's on her. She's responsible. And she's not really sure if the small allowance she's getting from a company is actually covering all the bases here. She wants to know a little bit more about what's going on, where that electricity is going, how much it's costing, just so she can manage things better. Now, it's not the only thing that happens in Lana's household when it comes to energy. Lana works for a company who has a very strong stance for climate action. A company like Canva, who got a cameo mention in one of the previous presentations as well. They've signed the Climate Pledge. Now, at the moment, Canva currently overestimate the amount of energy that's used by their employees, which they're tracking as part of their emissions reporting. They just don't have the data at the moment. And while they don't mind doing this because they're committed to exceeding their net zero targets, they do want a more accurate measurement. But wait, there's still more happening with Lana's household. Lana's home loan provider recently announced their own net zero target. Now, here we have Bank Australia, but many other banks are making similar commitments. I don't know if you know about the Net Zero Banking Alliance, but banks like ANZ, CommBank, NAB, Macquarie, they're all signing up. Now, I was surprised in preparing for this talk to learn that many banks consider the emissions of the homes and the premises that they loan to as part of their Scope 3 emissions. So they'd really like to have a much more accurate picture of the emissions of the premises and properties that they're funding. They need a solid baseline, but they're also trying to reduce that impact over time. They might provide green loans, for example, or run other initiatives to help their customers reduce their impact. So they need to continue to track things over time. It's not just a one-off thing. So already we can see from starting with just one household that energy data can be valuable to quite a number of parties. And I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't even mention an electricity company in that mix. So let's take a look at another household with a different flavour. Now, Ryan is a bit of a tech head and is really into the whole smart home thing. He's got an Apple HomeKit set up at home that controls anything that he can get to work with it. You name it, lights, aircon, home security cameras, the entertainment system. It's all just a, hey Siri, command away. Over the years, he's gotten fed up with high energy prices, so he did more than just chuckle at the cheeky advertising from one of the recent crop of upstart retailers. He signed up. But he learned very quickly that he really had to watch his usage during peaks or else get punished on the market. It was a lot more effort than he anticipated. So being a tech ed, he thought, why not automate it? Well, he found that none of it could be linked to his energy usage from the grid. So despite having all of these powerful tools at his disposal, the final missing link was energy data. And because he couldn't get that happening, he switched back to another retailer. Now, I don't know if you've seen the headlines recently, but the retailers are going through a bit of pain at the moment. They would love to have access to those same things, but no can do. So let's take a quick look at the local petrol station. They've recently introduced 6 new electric car charging spots. Now, in amongst everything else they have to deal with, they have to really worry about their electricity usage to avoid high peak demand charges. They need near real-time data to make decisions to ramp down usage within seconds. So the old smart meter just ain't going to cut it. But there's more to this story as well. They know full well that most charging will happen in the home. So they're very keen to deepen their relationship with their customers by being their retailer of choice in the home, even if it's just for their EV. But this same idea applies to the local parking provider, the hotel owner, or the grocery store. Basically anyone that's got a car spot and wants to offer EV charging as part of their offer to their customer base. And this even includes motoring clubs, which have significant reach both in terms of homes, but also beyond the home. Now, EV chargers generate even more energy data, and as vehicle-to-grid services become more available, these sorts of networks have the potential to become managers of very large fleets of distributed energy resources. So this whole EV thing begs an interesting question. Who exactly is the energy retailer in this scenario in the near future? Is it the traditional energy retailer? Is it the petrol company? Is it someone else? Maybe it's the car company themselves, Nissan or Tesla. Maybe it's the telco, they've got an energy company now. A motor club or an insurer, or a bank, or a consumer goods retailer. Who exactly is that energy retailer? What if the customer wants a different retailer for their EV than the one they use for the rest of the home? I mean, if you've got a Caltex card, do you want to use it at home? Do you want to use it at shops? Do you want to use it somewhere else? And what happens when somebody comes over and they want to use your EV charger that you're paying the electricity for? Who pays who, and how does that all work? So if we pause there and just step back a bit on this scenario and we take stock of all of the different folks that need energy data in this scenario so far, and just so far, we've got homeowners, bank lenders, petrol companies, property portfolio managers, parking vendors, business owners, and I'm sure you can think of more. I haven't even mentioned social housing, council, public transportation, manufacturers, data companies, like the list just goes on and on. And again, only one mention of an energy company. So in this scenario, we've really expanded the tent to include a bunch of new hashtag industries: prop tech, fintech, energy tech, climate tech, ag tech, hashtag something tech. There's got to be something out there that I've not thought of. You might feel like you've won buzzword bingo there. I certainly did when I was putting together that slide. But the key point is, these are not traditional players in the energy industry. They're not people that we're used to dealing with. They're often digital-first businesses, and they're used to data just being available, which is a long way from where we are today, I'm sure you can imagine. So if we think about this expanded tent, who exactly should be responsible for this data? Traditionally in the energy industry, the answer would look something like the metering providers or the retailer. And this might have made sense, I argue it probably didn't, but when data was just used for billing. But if we look at the need for energy data and these different use cases that it enables, it becomes really clear that it's much bigger than the energy industry alone. And so while the energy industry clearly does benefit from things like higher visibility of DER, demand response, better planning and maintenance, the sorts of things that we often talk about at these kinds of conferences, if we do this in isolation, what bigger opportunities might we be missing? Perhaps the rocket gets off, but we just don't get it off the ground. So we think we need to think differently, thinking beyond this narrow energy industry focus and do things differently from how we've done it in the past. For a start, we need to rethink smart meters. Let's get real, traditional smart meters just don't cut it. They're not real time, which is needed for many of the use cases that I've just mentioned, for providing end customer value if we think beyond the bill, and for taking decisions and actions when it matters, at the time it matters. Smart meters don't provide enough detail. Even for a simple household with solar, they only show inputs and exports, not what's being generated and used within the home. And you'd think that that's kind of important, right? So smart meter data is also essentially owned and controlled by the electricity industry. And as I said, that becomes problematic when we start to think bigger picture. And while at Wattwatchers we're big fans of the CDR for energy, we're part of that whole movement, it's a big step forward. It's only good for certain use cases and scales, and it remains squarely focused on billing data for the time being, so there's still a lot of work to be done. We need to take a leaf out of the data.gov data principles, which include public, accessible and timely, and I don't think we can even remotely call that the state of play today in terms of energy data. Digital first businesses are going to demand a much more streamlined experience, something akin to integrating with a Stripe payment processing system. For anyone that's worked in tech, if you've ever had to deal with Stripe, you'll know how simple and easy it is to get payments working. Not arcane, years-long standards processes and systems, nor the heavy regulations that are associated with smart meters and the related systems that support them. Which brings us to a related point. We need to rethink the wider technology stack as well. Maybe we need to start to think beyond industry protocols like Modbus and OCPP and 2030.5 and start engaging in consumer smart home standards like Matter, HomeKit, if this and that. This is partly about meeting people where they're at rather than trying to shoehorn them into some industry standard that we want them to use. But there's more to it than that. It's about creating an operating environment that makes it easy for data to flow and move around between applications, different use cases, agnostic to the platforms that are built on top of it. And lastly, we need to think how we finance these things. Currently, in our experience, what we look in the industry, see in the industry is that individual organisations are footing the bill for this sort of energy monitoring. Even in the electricity industry, the retailers and the metering providers are footing that bill and passing that on to the customer. How might we do that differently? At one level, this is a classic split incentive problem. You've got all these people that are benefiting from the data, but if any one of them foots the entire bill, it just doesn't make sense from a whole bunch of different perspectives. We argue that a better way to look at this is a shared cost for a shared benefit. And I'm not just talking government funding here. Commercial options definitely apply and make sense. So let's dive into that idea just a little bit more. Here we have a primary use case, which might be solar system monitoring, a common use case for energy data. If the costs are borne by a single stakeholder, it just may not stack up for that particular stakeholder. Well, what if the other stakeholders that can benefit paid for a smaller part of the overall cost stack? Now, here's just a few examples from the scenario I outlined today. And what if each of those were contributing to cover the baseline costs of providing that data? Perhaps it's only cents in the dollar per month. And I focused a lot on the commercial and industry stakeholders today, but let's not forget that the end customer gets value out of this process as well. So they might also be willing to pay. I know that's anathema to a lot of people that customers don't want to pay for anything, but if the value proposition stacks up, they will. And if we add all of this up, this could easily exceed the hard costs of providing that data in the first place. And if that was financed effectively, we could reduce the upfront costs significantly, perhaps even to zero. When the value versus cost is shared like this, it becomes a no-brainer. So what if energy data was just available, a fabric that underpinned a variety of different services across sectors, across different use cases, that's not owned or controlled by individual businesses competing and locked behind a walled garden or a closed system? And this is a concept that we at Wattwatchers call energy data as a service, and we've been doing a bit to see how we can make this a reality. So I just wanted to share with you a project that we've been working on. The My Energy Marketplace, we call it MEM for short because it gets a bit long. The MEM is a project that Wattwatchers is leading with backing from Arena that's exploring these concepts, this idea of shared value. We're asking literally, what might a marketplace for energy data look like? We're on track to install energy monitoring and in some cases control into 5,000 homes and small businesses, and doing the same in 250 schools where we're also providing educational packages related to that energy data. This allows us to demonstrate at a reasonable scale these ideas in the real world. The project is just over halfway through and we're switching gears from focus on rollout, getting those devices into the world, to providing access to the rich data set that the devices enable. Now, to be clear, consumer value, data rights, privacy and security are baked in, and I've literally done entire talks on just that, so we won't do that today. But customers get access to tools to monitor their own energy consumption, generation, do tariff comparisons, all of the things that you might just imagine that people would want to manage their home energy. But through the customer-friendly MEM terms and conditions, we also have permission to share anonymous data with others. Now, we're excited about that shift and what this can enable. We're interested in how it can enable innovation, research, and further customer value. The MEM data, if you're interested in using it, can allow you to test your own MVP or minimum viable product if you're launching a new service. You can be developing your business model, you could be proving out your tech, and I'm sure you can think of more and other uses for that data. In fact, we're kind of betting on the fact that you can. We're really interested to see what other people can come up with. And just to be clear, this is not your grandfather's data set. Gone are the days of relying on 10-year-old historical data for a few hundred sites. The MEM makes 30-second, 5-minute and 5-minute data available in near real time via a well-documented and easy-to-use application programming interface for just over 2,000 sites today, and that base is growing every month. Now, to be clear, this is real, live data that's being collected as energy is being used, without all the cost and hassle of rolling out your own devices. So there we go, the history of the universe, a suburb of the future in 25 slides or less. Myself and other folks from Wattwatchers are here today and some are tomorrow, so please catch up with us if you'd like to talk more about that. And as promised, if you're interested in a $950 smart energy package, take a quick shot of that QR code or the URL, fill out the form and you're away.